Welcome to another session of this course. We're going to be discussing now some concepts and an introduction to cost engineering, a simplified approach for estimating and quoting shared projects. If you're familiar with cost engineering, if you are already confident, you can skip this session, go straight to the modules that were more practical. But I would highly recommend that you can just have a good skimming and have a good look at what we're going to be discussing here to get the best outcome of this course. So we're going to be covering in this lesson what's cost engineering, three estimating methods, and work breakdown structure for shared projects. Well, throughout this course, I'll be very practical and pragmatic so we can get our hands on and understand what are actually the benefits of using each of those methods. And we're going to be in the next class checking what's the ABC curve. That's a very practical solution that will give us an oriented destination so we can save and invest time on actually what matters most. Well, to get started on this session here, I would like to read a brief quote from Chris Domanensky. That's the author of the book, Cost Engineering, a Practical Method for Sustainable Profit Generation in Manufacturing. So he says that he would estimate that three-fourths of manufacturing companies do not fully understand their own costs and make decisions daily that negatively impact their profitability. On the other hand, that roughly 90% of manufacturing companies do not have an existing or effective cost engineering process to assure sustainable profitability over time. And I have encountered many situations that kind of reaffirms what he's saying here, dealing with many different shared businesses throughout Australia. So some companies, they say, look, I use this free software, but the free software actually, is charging a percentage of their shared kit material, or they're making money in another way that's a little bit hidden, and that can damage, uh, their ability to compete in the market. Other people, they don't know their costs. They just put like these massive markups and they say, look, that's going to pay for everything, but they don't make any accountability of what they're actually making for each project. And obviously, if you're just starting out, if you're busy erecting sheds, that's understandable. However, as you grow more, it's good to be more diligent on your pricing structure, on your fees, so you can have a much better understanding of your offering to invest more time and money of what matters in your business. Okay. So we're going to be covering some of these principles about cost engineering just so we can have them on the back of our mind. So please, I would like some patience. It is not going to be a lengthy slide, but it's good for us to have at least the visuals here. So as defined by Wikipedia, the engineering practice devoted to the management of project costs involving activities such as estimating, cost control and forecasting, investment appraisal, and risk analysis. That's what we call cost engineering. This image here shows that there are lots of items under that umbrella of cost engineering. That's also from the same book that we're going to show here as a resource if you want to get more information about it. But we're not going to be talking about value analysis, trace, or cost accounting. We're just going to be focusing on the main principles around the cost estimating, so we can get it right when we're setting up our pricing database or when you're setting up our Shedmate system in the right way, so we don't need to be redoing things. As promised, a few resources here. There are some books out there that can give you a good understanding if you want to actually advance more in your knowledge and understanding about it. Especially the Rawlinson's, the cost guide will give you good rates that if you are just starting a business, you could use them as a reference, but obviously this is going to vary from area to area, from times to times. And now let's jump into the first more practical definition that I'd like to bring up. So I'd like to cover some of the different estimating methods out there, just so you can have a good understanding of those and see what actually applies more to your business. And at the end, we're going to see how Shedmate would benefit your business more by, understanding these different methods and how you can leverage the best from your quotation program. The first one is the order of magnitude estimate or conceptual rough estimate. So that's generally that ballpark figure that someone in the pub is asking you, hey, you're a shed business, how much it would cost me to build this shed? So if you're starting up this Rawlinson Constructions Cost Guide, so this image here from agricultural sheds was taken from that book. It actually tells you for different types of sheds. We're using here a sample for a machinery shed, different kind of categories of the same one. But if you look at the freestanding one wall open, similar to the imagery on the right, you can see that in Adelaide, they'll cost between 230, 245 for that shed project. Okay. So if we just multiply 200, let's say that the guy on the pub asks you, hey, how much a 200 square meter freestanding machinery shed would cost me? You could multiply that by 235 square meters, and that will be $45,000. And just in terms of curiosity, I have modeled the same shed in Shedmate, and I asked for the pricing, and it gave me around $44,900. So it's pretty close. Could be a coincidence, but that was a pretty close result. But obviously, when we're just talking about this early stage, like ballpark figures here, we have a low accuracy because this could be 3 meters high, this could be 6 meter highs. That would change the shed completely. This shed could be placed on top of a hill in which it would have to sustain like higher wind loads compared to a shed that could be, enclosed by shielding. So there are lots of different variabilities here. One of them would be soil that can impact your foundations. So obviously we don't have a lot of information here, but the rough estimate is still valid and can provide you with, a good tool to actually give a good pricing to your customer, at least to create engagement, not necessarily to close a contract. Then we move to other estimating methods. One of them is the preliminary estimate or budget estimate. So this generally is done through preliminary engineering. So it's not only in the pub, you're already actually getting some historical information to kind of see what frames you would generally be using for that specific shed. You need more information such as schematic design, supplier quotas, and unit rates. And this can give you a much better result. So accuracy could be between 10 to 25%. So just going the same example that we did on the last one, we would estimate here for that project like $42,000 with more or less 15%. That would give us a range of 35.7 to 48. So you can see that the range now it's diminishing as we're getting more and more, as we're developing more and more with that shed design. And then the last one is the definitive estimate. So this is generally when we involve site-specific engineering, detailed executive projects. You have already construction and detailed engineering drawings that will help you to extract bill of material quantities and supplier contracts. And now, using the same example, we are around $43,500, more or less 5%. That would be 41 to 45. So if you go back to that one that we just designed, the total price would be 44. So that's actually if you consider the rough estimate, the preliminary estimate, and the detailed estimate, they're kind of, going into the same direction, but we are more confident in providing a quote with a detailed estimate than with a preliminary estimate. However, all of these methods, they're good to engage customers and have the conversations on the sales department. And then the reason I believe Shedmate is essential in this is because there are 3 engineering areas that Shedmate integrates in real time for you. One of them is the shed design itself. So you can easily design shed, add roller doors, add sliding doors, change the height, change the roof slope, make all of those modifications to the shed structure without needing much drafting skills. So you can just go to the system and start making those modifications with little training. And then you have the design you want. And also this integrates with structural engineering. So the system can use site-specific engineering or preliminary engineering to give you the right frames for that quotation. And then we have the cost engineering side of Shedmate. That's what we call instant quoting. That sums up all of your own pricing database from your company. So the raw material price or what you buy from suppliers. And also with your own pricing calculations, markups, margins, everything. So by setting that up, you have all of that that's working for you, and you can design those projects in real time. The outcome of it and the benefits are you can provide a definitive estimate to your prospect, to your customer, to your client on day one. Actually, in the first meeting, while they sit in the office, you can just iterate and design the right shed for them and tell them, okay, that's how much your shed's going to cost, because the system is going to be doing all of that calculation in real time, not only in terms of the design, of the engineering, but also in your pricing that's going to be set based on your own company standards. So understanding these different methods gives you that good understanding of, okay, this is going to be really good because you can do that in real time, okay? But obviously to set this up, there are a few important concepts we need to understand. And some people, they can miss this at the beginning because they're just thinking about a specific project. But if you look at your business delivery as a whole, the different types of sheds you are delivering, and if you're a concreter, if you're an erector, this is going to change the pricing that you're going to include in your work breakdown structure. So what's a work breakdown structure? Once again, I don't want to be very theoretical here, but that's a hierarchical decomposition of a project into smaller, more manageable components that helps in clarifying project deliverables and simplifying the process of estimating costs, resources, and timelines. Timelines, it's going to be very important if you have a more complex business that you are manufacturing sheds, you are delivering sheds, you are erecting sheds, and obviously concreting before the erection. So how do you manage all of those different teams in a way that if there is a delay to the manufacturing, you're going to be able to have a very good, redistribution of that workload on your schedule, so you can have a good estimation of when the shed is going to be actually delivered and finalized. So to do this, you need a very good work breakdown structure. You need probably a software like Microsoft Project to actually put all of that dependency. So if there is a delay, all of the other projects are kind of delayed as well, and that automation will happen smoothly. So we have done that before for other businesses, but once again, I don't want to focus on that level of complexity. I just want you to understand that the work breakdown structure exists, and that's an example of it, okay? And based on it, I would like you to reflect on what would be your own work breakdown structure. Because if you're not doing concreting or erection, if you're just a broker or a seller of shed kits, you have a much simpler work breakdown structure to worry about when setting up your pricing on a system to quote. However, if you're a concrete as well, you might be able to focus more on rates. And you're going to see on the next lesson when we cover the ABC curve or ABC analysis. That's a very practical way of identifying what matters the most in terms of what to focus your energy to improve pricing. So that will show us that generally erection and concreting, it's going to be a very important area. So should I focus more the optimization on those areas? Or should I be, just looking for how to quantify my bolts, so things that are not as important, okay? So here's an example of it. I'm not going to be reading through it. You can pause and look to this video, but you're going to have different areas to deliver that chat project and understanding that they exist to help us to kind of have this kind of checklist to look at them and add them to our pricing database in a way that it works well for our business. All right, let's get more practical and jump to the ABC curve analysis. That's going to give us a much more funny environment to play with. I'm going to open Shedmate and show you extracting the information from a model to Excel, how we can create that ABC curve so we understand what it is. And then this will make that foundation so we can actually jump to the system and be very, very practical setting up our shed costs.